everyone. I am Sasha Thackaberry-Voinovich, and I am here with another Real World Conversation where we talk with professionals and experts in their field about specific topics, career journeys, advice, and really get the context of what's going on either with AI, project management, one of those current topics, or with careers and career development. And today I am here with Tawnya Means, who has also joined our advisory board, and I am very excited to have her. Tawnya, why don't you give us the 30-second background, and then we will jump right into it.
That sounds great. Thanks, Sasha. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you, and just a little bit of context to who I am. So my background is in educational technology. I've been in educational technology for more than 20 years now. My PhD in education is in information science and learning technologies, and my master's is in educational technology itself. So I've just been in this world for a long time. I've had a lot of experience with online learning, and now most recently, most exciting thing for me is AI and how it can be used to improve and enhance our ability to learn and grow and just become the ultimate people that we can be.
Oh, that's fantastic. The ultimate people that we can be. I love that. Like leveling up, level up yourself, the best version of yourself. Okay, so you have a Substack, and it's actually pretty darn interesting. There are a lot of Substacks out there in the world, but the most recent post that, and I actually think the initial post, which was very well done, you talk about the what is it called? The 2 Sigma problem, right?
Yes.
And in education, AI has a lot of potential to help bridge that gap. So why don't we start by just help us understand what is the 2 Sigma problem for those individuals who maybe aren't quite as geeky as we are.
Absolutely. So about 40 years ago or so, Benjamin Bloom did some research, and he showed that when students went through a learning experience in which they had a personal tutor, one-on-one, they performed at about 2 sigmas or two standard deviations above what they would have performed in group instruction. So we've known for a really long time that when you have, and this makes total sense, right? When you have one-on-one interaction with someone who knows more than you, you learn more and you are able to perform better and your experience in learning is better. And we've known this for a long time. We have the research that shows it. We've also probably innately known it for our entire existence of humanity on this earth, right? We just know this thing. And so we've got some research that shows it, but economically and logistically, it's impossible to accomplish without some kind of an assistance or technology that can provide this one-on-one for every single person in the world. And so what's really amazing is this idea that AI can serve that purpose, that it can be the one-on-one tutor that adapts so closely to what the learner is looking for, what they need, their specific and context, experience, and interests. And so when we think about how AI can come along and help us to resolve this 2 Sigma problem that we've been trying to resolve for forever, it gets at that idea of every single person can have a one-on-one personalized experience in learning.
Yes, I love that. So for those of us who have an educational background, there was this reference. So years and years and years ago, we would talk about adaptive learning, which was essentially path learning, right? Like you pick one thing and it moves you in this direction, or you pick something else and it moves you in that direction. Sort of a choose your own adventure, only you didn't know you were choosing it. It was just responding to your choices. This is a very different thing we're talking about, and this is getting a lot closer to that robot tutor in the sky that would actually adapt for every individual. So, like, how close are we to this working, or is this working now?
Well, so little pieces of it are coming together in really amazing ways, and ask me in 6 minutes how close we are, because it's going to be different than now. I mean,
Right.
it's just happening so fast. And that's, you know, when I wrote the article, I was kind of pulling some of these pieces together. The idea of the language that you speak best in, or you think best in, right? Maybe you have a second language that you use for your education. We often talk about English being the language of instruction, whatever. But what if your language isn't, you know, primarily English, and you are constantly having to translate in your mind in order to be able to provide an answer that makes sense to the instructor or to your peers? But if you could think in your native language and learn in your native language, you would be able to show your knowledge and your understanding so much better. So even just the idea of the language of instruction can be adapted to your specific needs. Talking about your background and the things that maybe you passed the test, but you don't really remember, like long division. Okay, I know how to do long division, but if you sit me down and say, do this long division by hand, I'm going to have to think about it for a minute, you know, just because it's not something I do all the time. And so there's a forgetting curve there. You're going to kind of put things in your, you know, off the table if you're not using them on a regular basis. So then you come in and you ask me to demonstrate. I know something that, yeah, I know how to do it, but I don't remember how to do it. Or you say, you know, here's something that I want you to be able to demonstrate competency in. We often say, understand, you know, that terrible word where it's like, how do you know that?
Immeasurable understanding.
Right. Observable. But maybe you've demonstrated competency in something, but maybe you were, you know, maybe it wasn't really measuring your competency. You know, we talk about authentic and genuine assessments in which we're measuring what we think is an observable outcome, but maybe we're not really. Maybe it's just they were able to do it, but they really didn't understand it, or those kinds of things. Well, we've got now study mode in ChatGPT. We've got, you know, Socratic questioning in a number of these different platforms and tools where I can continue asking questions over and over and over again and revealing that I do or do not know because of that back and forth. And that's what you get with an individual. If you and I have a conversation about some, you know, topic that you know really well and I'm learning, then you're going to notice when I answer a question, it's like, that's not quite right. And you're going to be able to prompt me more, tell me more, you know, help to understand it more. So that's where the ultimate patience of an AI can continue to do that. As long as the user is willing to interact, the AI doesn't stop.
Right.
And that can really get at that ability to push learning, to encourage learning, to, would you like this? Well, what about this? You know, and it's that back and forth that's really so essential. And it's so much different from adaptive learning. I mean, I was so excited when I first started learning about adaptive learning, because I thought this is the solution. But then you're right. There's a finite number of paths that can be created by the technology, and we can keep putting people back in the path or switching them to a different path, but we can't have an infinite number of paths. It's just impossible to code. Yeah. And so now with AI, it's really infinite. There is no point in which the AI is going to be like, okay, you're an idiot. Just stop. You're not going to learn this.
So there were a couple of interesting situations whereby AI attempted to blackmail. Did you hear about this?
That's true.
That was crazy. Yeah. So there are, I mean, you do have to be watchful of certain things, but.
And that's actually something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I've just recently read some stuff from Anthropic where they were talking about how they have done research to try and understand why those bad behaviors, deviance happen. And we are now starting to understand how they happen. And so because of that, Anthropic is going in and they're injecting little pieces of that into the training data so that we can train the models to avoid those behaviors. Because we don't want it
be
where
less
AI is going to go off the deep end and call somebody an idiot when they're supposed to be learning, you know?
Yes, especially as an AI tutor, you definitely don't want that happening. And then there, everyone's going to ask about the hallucinations. And I think it's important for people to understand that AI is not perfect. It is a giant probability engine, right? Is constantly sort of like learning along the way, but it's not ever actually your friend sitting there, right? So it still doesn't have, this is interesting, it doesn't necessarily have that affective component where it's like you believe the person cares about you, but then does it. And here's the reason, not because I don't think, like AI, knock on wood, hopefully is not sentient and has feelings yet. Again, wait 6 minutes, terrifying new world. But
wait till you talk to Maya or Miles at Sesame.
Well, but it has personality though. You can have it have a personality and talk to you in a certain way. And I know people who have like sort of their own bot-based relationship where they do feel cared about and supported. And so like, how does that interact in this world where it's not just about answers and process and helping someone walk through the learning process, but it could also be about feeling like you're cared about.
Well, and so I have two answers for that. The first one is to think about you. So first you talked about hallucinations. And I actually have a little bit of a different take on hallucinations. I actually write about this one and maybe that's my next article.
Okay.
Because I actually think hallucinations are amazing. If you think about the idea that, okay, if I say what's 2 + 3 + 1, I expect to get 6, right? Always. Right. That's fact. But if I say, help me think about this problem, I actually want hallucinations. I want weird and wild ideas that I never would have considered on my own, because that's what I'm coming to it for. So I look at those hallucinations as the ability to be creative in a programmed way, a machine learning kind of way. And that partnership, and that's why I talk about the human plus AI instead of the human dash AI, the human plus AI collaboration is where we get the most power.
Have you heard about the "and a banana" prompt?
I think I heard something about it. I can't remember. It was something, remind me, because I saw it and I was like, oh, that's weird.
It's this concept, it doesn't have to be a banana, but it's this concept that because humans sort of have a tendency to ask questions in a certain way or ask similar types of questions, if you want creativity back, in addition to describing, I would like something that's wacky, or you inject something that is foreign to that situation into the prompt
to extend the context.
Yes, it'll extend the context. It'll give you more creativity. So it doesn't actually have to be "and a banana."
Right.
But it could be like throwing a curveball in there, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the second part of your question you had was about, well, how do I want AI to respond to me so that I feel like I belong, I matter, my ideas are important? And we see some of that's over the top when we get the sycophantic kind of like, you're amazing, that's an awesome idea. And it's like, no, that was the stupidest idea. So it can take it too far. But really, okay, so I could be a really bad human, and you could tell me something that you're vulnerable about, and you could tell me something that you really care about, and I could be a bad human and be like, oh, Sasha, that's amazing, or I'm so sorry that's happened to you. And I could not really care at all, right? Yeah. I could just be using facial expressions. I could be using emotions in my voice. I could be using proper words that we generally tie to care or a sense of compassion or empathy. And I could still be a really bad human and be like, you're stupid, those kinds of things. And so when we recognize that there are certain things that help us to feel like we belong, there are certain things that help us to feel like we matter, there are certain responses, and we see those in an AI, it resonates with us, right? Because that's what we want. We want someone to respond to us. We want someone to adjust their behavior to fit what we're saying. And so I don't think that's a bad thing. I do think it's something that we as humans need to be cautious of.
Right.
Because we need to recognize that the real reward is the friendship that we as two humans have when we talk to each other and empathize with each other and respond to each other's vulnerabilities and trust each other. That's real. Whereas that same skin mask on an AI interaction, it's not real.
Right.
And there's a place where we need to teach people how to recognize that.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because even if the interactions have all of sort of the trappings of being in that caring, supportive environment, learning doesn't always happen best when you're feeling cared for and supported 100% of the time and always affirmed. You know, some of the greatest learning experiences I've had have been when I have been on the edge of feeling, you know, devalued or like I was stupid, because like, not over the top, but you know, you do need to be pushed sometimes and challenged.
Right. And there's work, pain, sorrow, sadness. All of these things are part of learning.
Yep.
They are the reason why we then have joy, flourish, grow, expand.
Yep.
You have to have the both, right? Yep. You have to have the hard in order to have the easy. You have to have the things that are really, really yucky in order to have the things that are really, really amazing. Not only to appreciate the good because you've seen the bad, but to recognize where things need to adjust.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's opposition everywhere. Though that opposition shouldn't be eliminated.
Right.
We get this real dystopian society when we just say, let's take away all the pain. And I mean, The Giver, I love that story. But we take away all the pain so that you can just have the good. And it's like, well, but the pain's still there. We're just masking it. We're hiding from it. So I think that there's a really important place for us to recognize that the reality of true friendship, the reality of engaging with another human is essential. But I don't think that means that there's not a place for an empathetic AI that can let me practice my conversation with someone.
100%.
You know, have that vulnerable discussion. So I think this is a completely different world that we're moving into, and it impacts education in really important ways. There are many, many learners who don't have their needs being met. There are many, many people who don't have a sense of wellness, a sense of someone to talk to, a place to be able to practice or to bounce ideas off of, or to, you know, push themselves in different ways. And I don't think we should say, well, it's not real, so you can't have it. Or it's not real, so we need to restrict it. Or it's not real, so we need to monitor it to make sure that you're not doing something you shouldn't be doing. I think we need to just teach people how to manage that space and to be able to recognize what's real and what's not.
In some ways, this actually reminds me of, you know, the earlier days of online learning where, you know, the technology wasn't great. So the experience wasn't maybe fantastic, and maybe it was isolating. And frankly, some online learning could be right now. And that's why you have to be intentional about building in opportunities for community and everything. But, you know, we're just getting started with AI and learning.
That's right.
I mean, we are just at the very beginning here. And a lot of the things that we're talking about, like what is the appropriate level of challenge and what does happen when AI hallucinates, how do you work in a creative way, make sure you're being supported but not coddled. These are things that we're going to be able to actually have more than a point of view on, but we're going to be able to fix and experiment with and try, because we are really early in the game, and to me that's exciting, and your work certainly has been contributing to advancing the field, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be putting my thoughts out there, but I'm more excited to be having people interact with it. So as people push back and they give me different ideas, or they say, well, what about this? It just gives me another avenue to go into. And so that's really, to me, the most exciting and important piece of what we're doing. Putting content out there is only half of the story. It's where do we take it from there? How do we have the conversations? How do we engage with it? How do we help other people to think differently? And that community and that conversation is the piece that matters the most, I think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being our Real World Conversation guest today. I greatly appreciate it. And we will definitely be having further conversations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.